My name's Tom Chitson. I am the front of house engineer and the head of audio for the Scrapyard stage at Boomtown. And I am the programme leader of the live sound degree at DBS.
I'm Fiona Richards, also known as Sound by Fiona. I'm a tour manager, front of house engineer and monitor engineer here in Bristol. I also tour, and I've been touring in the UK and Europe, and I've also been to Russia.
My name's Tom Curtin. I've been a sound engineer, I'm 42, 43 now, so a long time. I think I started in my late teens, early 20s.
My name's Chris. I joined DBS in January 2021 as the live sound module leader. Before that, I was generally I'm a system tech, specialising in arena touring.
My main responsibilities are the day-to-day running and sort of maintenance of the stage. We have to be open at a certain time. We have to adhere to certain regulations and certain restrictions. And essentially, we're in charge of all things audio.
So that could be within what the audience hears, so through the front of house mix, through the PA. It could also mean what the band are hearing on stage. It could also mean being in charge of things like wireless mics and wireless in-ears. That's a really big thing. Radio frequency coordination is huge, and it's really important that it's done properly. All sorts, really. And also making a cup of tea soon sometimes for the rest of the crew.
As system tech, you are the buffer between the creative and artistic desires of the front of house engineer and the actual physics of how sound works. So a lot of my time would be spent sort of trying to understand what the artist wants, what the front of house engineer wants, and then actually trying to make the best choice of compromise with what we're limited to with audio.
For me then, it was always about being that hidden member of the band. That's just because of the way I did it. The bands I worked with tended to be the ones that were quite creative and experimental, and they didn't just want you to make them sound like what they'd recorded. Like, they didn't want you just to make it sound like the CD. They'd want you to be that extra member that kind of hidden in the background. And I kind of liked that.
There's a feeling that you get when the house lights go down and it's just you at front of house with the front of house engineer, and everybody in the crowd is incredibly excited. And the first song happens and it's loud and it sounds good. And for the crowd, it's what they've been waiting for months. And it doesn't matter where you go, everybody reacts in exactly the same way. You do the long hours and you go the extra mile, because if you make somebody's year, but you know about it because all the fans go, fans go wild. I think that's the best bit.
Essentially, the physicality of sound and the physics behind why it makes me feel the way that I do is what inspired me into being into sound. To really just be able to manipulate low frequencies is what really I enjoy. I think that's what everyone needs to experience in this world at some point.
Live music is incredibly important to me. It's such a huge part of my life. So being a part of that is incredible. I love the adrenaline. I love the rush. I love meeting bands and artists. And also I love having a spare hour on tour where I can go and find a good record shop.
It's one of those careers where it's not just a job, it's kind of a social life as well, I guess. That's the best way to put it, isn't it, I think, for a lot of people.
When I see an incredible musician, I just know how many hours they've put in. I just know how hard they've worked to get where they are, and that I just feel so lucky to be sharing that environment with them. I remember watching Maverick Sabre SWX, and I was house monitors, and I was just like staggered. It was incredible. They were all just so good at their respective instruments, and I was just like, I feel so lucky to have been at this show.
You know, you pick up an album by someone and it completely blows your mind. Still to this day that happens, you know, that will regularly happen. Someone who just does something completely unheard of and you're like, oh my God. But the beauty of being a sound engineer is quite often you might get to work with that person at some point. And so you get to see the inner workings of that and understand what that person's thought process is.
Starting out in the industry can be a challenge. I think to be forthcoming and to go and approach people that you can see working in these environments at gigs, and identify the right time to ask them the question, or to approach with a beer held out in a hand, just like, here's a beer, can I talk to you? I think networking is super important, and not being afraid to take any warehouse work. If you end up being offered warehouse work, and even if it's just stock checking or like sorting out cables, but if you're there and then a show comes up, you're more likely to get offered the show than you were if you're still fishing for jobs out on your own. I mean, networking is super important, and I think at the start of your career you just have to say yes to everything.
So one thing I'd always recommend is try and do things and mix bands and get involved in stuff that you would not normally listen to.
I would say take any opportunity there is to shadow a monitor engineer and mix monitors, because it teaches you gain structure, and that is super important. And it also trains your ears for frequencies. Get comfortable stage blacks, that's really important. Have really good comfy stage blacks with pockets if possible, if not a bum bag, so you can put a roll of tape and a Sharpie and a Leatherman in there.
Don't always think there's one path to an end result. There truly isn't. There is no, you can have 3 sound engineers and they will all mix something completely differently, or they will get to that same end result maybe, but by completely different paths. So don't feel like you have to follow the rules.
My first arena tour, I wasn't ready for an arena tour, so I shouldn't have been there. But you kind of go for things, and you just start trying. You bluff your way through. You bluff your way through to get the opportunities. Once you've got the opportunity, you've got to prove yourself. But you would never have got the opportunity in the first place unless you were bluffing about whether you could do it in the first place. So I think it's take chances, take opportunities, but then work hard to sort of achieve the goals that you set yourself.